So my name is Michael Staten. I'm a partner at Learn Capital. We're the most active early-stage investor into education and learning in the world. Universities keep on thriving. So the future of the university is an existential question for education, and Robin is going to give Minerva's answer. So.
Thanks. Good morning. Good morning. Before I get started, I believe in audience participation. So I'd love to get a sense for who is in the room. So I'm going to ask a question. Just raise your hand. How many of you are entrepreneurs looking for ways to solve problems in education? Show of hands. How many of you are academics and educators? Yeah. How many are just in the ed tech industry? Any students? Yeah. All right. Well, as Michael said, I am Robin Goldberg. I am the Chief Experience Officer at Minerva. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. I'll give you a little bit of an understanding as I go through the next few minutes. But I think what's important is to think about what the title of this talk is, and that's Revolutionizing Education. And we looked at this 4 years ago. I had the incredible pleasure of joining with a team of very accomplished and very experienced academics, entrepreneurs, to reimagine higher education. Okay, so why do you need a startup, a new company, to think about higher education? There are 4,000 American colleges and universities. There are 20,000 global institutions of higher learning. So why in the world should a small group come together and reimagine higher education? It needs to happen because the traditional systems are failing. They're failing to deliver on the promise that they're making to the students who enroll. So let me give you just one really clear example that shows the disconnect. So Gallup did a survey, and they asked chief academic officers at top institutions around the world, how well are you preparing your students for the workforce? And 94% of them said extremely or very well. So they thought they were doing a great job. Same question asked to employers. Anyone want to take a stab at what executives thought the answer was and how well institutions were preparing graduates for the workplace? So we've got 96%. What do you think executives said? Somebody shout out. What did I hear? 20? Somebody say 10? 11%. There is a major disconnect between what students are getting when they go through an educational experience and what they need to actually be productive when they come out. The bigger question is more than just them going into their first job, but we all have a collective responsibility. If this is a room full of people who care about education, we have a societal obligation to educate the next generation of leaders that will run governments, that will run corporations, that will run philanthropic organizations. And we have to think about how do we educate them to make decisions of consequence. And that's really where we started when we thought about what needs to happen with higher education. Pretty daunting and audacious task. What we thought about, instead of burning the university degree, is there a way to make it valuable? Is there a way to actually deliver on that promise of higher education? And at Minerva, we felt it was really important that we rethought about how students can spend those formative years to give them an education and experiences that allow them to make a difference in the world. So, how do you start an institution from scratch? Well, the beauty is you get to set the reset button. You don't have to take all these legacy systems. So the beauty for all of you who are starting new things, new ventures, you can throw out all the rules. Be unconventional, not just for the sake of being different, because there is a better way. And we thought about that. We thought about it in every aspect. We thought about it from what do we want our students to learn? How do we put students at the forefront? Imagine an institution of higher education that is intentionally designed to to prepare students for the world. Very different if you go back and you look at how most institutions operate. So we put that front and center, and we said, so what do we need them to learn? What should we be teaching? Our solution was to think about practical knowledge. Knowledge they're going to need when they go out into the workplace, when they go out into organizations that need support, whether it's in project management, whether it's in making big decisions, whether it's driving major initiatives. So we set it up where we have a foundational year where we teach frameworks for decision making. We call them habits of mind, things that become automatic, frameworks that they're going to use, and every student gets that same core curriculum their first year. As they go through Minerva's program, they then pick an area that they want to major in and concentrate, and they go very, very deep into a discipline, and they will graduate in 4 years with a degree, hopefully one that doesn't get burned up, but one that really matters. But they all start with a common language and a common foundation. That's what we teach. We get to think about, how do we teach? I saw some really interesting models by some of the new companies that just pitched. How do we teach? This is actually a terrible way to learn. It's a great way to teach. It's easy for me. I put together some remarks. I stand up on a podium and I just talk out at an audience. But it's really hard to learn. What would be much better is if we turned on the lights and I started calling on all of you. If you knew you had to be engaged because you were on deck, what do you do? If I were putting you into small groups of 4 and 5 and said, work on a problem, boy, you have to know that material in advance. So it's not just what you teach, but how you teach and how you think about engaging the students all the time. Now, I have a question, because this is audience participation. How many of you are sitting here going, but wait, I thought this was the ed tech track and she hasn't mentioned technology yet? Anyone think about that yet? Couple nods. The reason is because the solution isn't just the technology. The solution is, how do we educate the next generation? And what do we do about it? That's the problem. How do we do it? It's what we teach and how we teach. How do we create that interactive classroom environment? At Minerva, our solution was to design a classroom enabled by technology that is better than if students went into a building with 4 walls. Well, how in the world do you do that? With our active learning forum, every student is center stage. There's no one in the back row. 19 students or less, present faculty member, constantly engaging the students. Faculty member has tools. I know exactly who's spoken, who's had too much time in class, who's had too much airtime, who needs a chance to make a comment. Tools that help the person facilitating the class, that trained faculty member, add a tremendous amount of value to the topic that's being discussed in class. How else can technology help? We know from the science of learning, we know that if you give feedback, feedback can be an incredible tool for learning. How many of you went to a university where you sat in lectures, you took a midterm and a final, and you got a grade? How many of you had that experience? Okay? Very, very common. So then you get a B+. What do you do about it? Have you learned anything? Using technology, we can give a tremendous amount of feedback to the students, which enables them to continue learning after every class session. Technology also affords us an opportunity to think about the world we live in. All resources aren't always sitting in the same geographical area. Traditional universities, and we're talking about some of the things that we had to reimagine, well, traditional universities are on some isolated campus somewhere in the world. The best faculty may not be in that city where the students are. So how can technology help bridge that? How can we bring together the best educators, regardless if they're living in the same city as our students, or regardless if they're living halfway across the world? and technology can enable us to do that. So I'm talking about reimagining, revolutionizing education. It's about what we want to do and knowing our goal first and foremost, what we want the students to come out with. We want to think about how we have to train them and prepare them, what we're going to teach, how we're going to teach, and even where we're going to do it. None of these are small incremental changes, because education truly does need some big, major reimagining, if you will. It needs people to take bold steps, to have bold visions. Many of you today are here thinking about how do we push this forward. I encourage you, think big, because we have to in order to make the kind of dramatic change we want to make. When we think about all of this, another key aspect is measuring impact. So it's one thing to talk about what you're going to do, and I encourage everyone to think about what is the impact it has on the students. How are you going to measure that impact? And Learn Capital has been very good at asking us that question all the time. So for those of you thinking about new ventures and new ideas, think about how you're going to measure that. We do it in a couple ways. We take standardized tests that other universities give their students as well and look at how our students perform on those same standardized metrics. And what we've seen already is our freshmen progress more than average students do in 4 years across other universities. That's a pretty compelling metric that says our solution is making an impact. We look at rubrics. We measure everything like crazy. Why? Because we want to make sure that the student learning outcomes are really being delivered. So having those rubrics and objective ways to hold ourselves accountable is really important. And the third is outside acceptance, outside validation. So at the very beginning, I talked about the disconnect between institutions and employers. So how do you start to bridge that? Well, you take students who've been through your curriculum and you go out and you put them out in the workforce. You get them internships in interesting and compelling organizations. We put our freshmen in internships at Amazon, at Uber. They were at 500 startups. They were at Learn Capital. They were on Wall Street at Allen & Company. They were across every discipline with an opportunity to go and contribute. We then went and surveyed those employers, and we asked them, how did they do? The feedback was our students performed better than any other interns, undergraduate, or graduates. Why? They perform better because we taught them how to make decisions, how to be thoughtful, how to be principled, how to take data you've never seen before and think about how do you bring that into a thoughtful analysis that can derive thoughtful recommendations. We gave them tools for communicating. We gave them tools to be critical thinkers. And those are the tools that employers are looking for at the end of the day. So I said we started this 4 years ago. So where are we now? Well, we have hundreds of students, and right now they're in 2 different locations, in San Francisco and in Berlin, because one of the things we want our students to do is go out and experience the world. If they're going to make decisions for all of us and make those decisions of consequence, we want them to have a global perspective. So they rotate every semester to a different city in the world. So we've got freshmen in San Francisco right now. We have our sophomores in Berlin. And at the end of this semester, they'll head down to Buenos Aires and get some experience in Latin America as well. So we've got hundreds of students. They're going through both the freshman and the sophomore curriculum. So they've got the foundational courses, and now they're going deep into areas that they're passionate about. They're giving back to the communities that they live in. We've got employers who are saying, we want those students over the summer. And so what we're hearing constantly is validation that what we're doing is right. That's exciting. But I'll say it actually doesn't even matter. Because what matters is what we're doing for the students and putting them at the center. And what matters is that we're preparing them to go out in the world and to do things that truly will have meaning and impact for all of us in this room and for the sake of the world. Thanks.
Can I
Yeah.
ask, Robin, can I ask you? We're obviously invested in Minerva, and actually, my girlfriend is a student in the master's degree program. Very important. So a few questions for
Sure.
perspective. How many of your students are international students?
Great question. So we wanted to make Minerva accessible to students all over the world. 80%, about 80% of our students come from outside the US, even though we are an American university. But great talent resides everywhere in the world. So we make a huge effort to do outreach, finding a very unique student profile. Can I just take a moment, Michael? And let me just tell you the kind of students who thrive at Minerva. They are students who are intellectually curious. They've done a really good job on academics in their high school years, but they have that hunger. You know, it's that student who always stays after class or wants one more reading or give me another question or I want to dig deeper. They are socially conscious. They realize there is a world around them that needs a lot of fixing. And they're humble. They're really nice people. And when you take really smart, really talented, really accomplished people from all over the world, you put them together in this incredible community, they feed off each other. And then they go into cities like Berlin and work with Kieran on the refugee crisis. Or they go to San Francisco and they work with the mayor's office on homeless policy. And so they're really active in terms of what they do from there. But it's an incredibly diverse class. Our students today come from 50 different countries around the world.
And even though you didn't show the technology, we actually are big believers in the technology because it helps run active participatory seminars, basically. Small classes where everyone's required to participate. And you've gotten some attention, actually a lot of attention from other institutions and universities that are interested in maybe, working with Minerva in some way. How are you exploring that for those that are at institutions here in Spain?
Yeah. When we started at Minerva, it was about figuring out the best solution for our classroom. It wasn't about a technology. So we didn't start out as a licensing business. We started out with how do we serve our students best? And how do we create this amazing interactive classroom experience? But as people have learned about it, as Michael said, there's been a tremendous amount of interest. And we are talking with other universities and other institutions who are trying to figure out how to take this kind of compelling classroom environment into their institutions. So we're not interested if someone says, oh, I just want to put lectures online. That's not us. We don't believe in lectures. This is actually really hard for me because it's not a great way to teach or to learn. So it is about leveraging the technology. If you're interested, please come and talk to me. We are essentially creating a tremendous amount of intellectual property, all of our curriculum as well as the technology of the platform, the active learning forum.
And you've recruited some of the world's best scholars in their discipline, not because they're passionate about their scholarship, but because they're passionate about teaching, right?
Yeah.
And how do you facilitate better teaching and learning? And particularly, you have a feedback system, right, where the instructors give personalized feedback to every student.
Yeah.
Why are the world's best scholars passionate about working with Minerva?
So we're really fortunate. Our founding dean is Dr. Stephen Kostlin, one of the preeminent experts on cognitive science, on the brain, on learning, on the science of learning. He was at Harvard for 30 years, then running the Center for Advanced Behavioral Sciences at Stanford. And Stephen really brought a tremendous amount of thinking around how should the curriculum be structured, but then how do we bring faculty in and help prepare them for this kind of teaching environment. So it is about finding teachers who care more about students than they care about research. It's a key component of what we recruit for. We do have an incredibly accomplished array of faculty from the best institutions around the world, but they come with a passion to educate those students. They are required after every class session to go through and watch what happened in class. So we record every single class session. It enables the faculty member to go back and to give feedback to every single student after every single session. Imagine the load on a faculty member. Why would they do it? They do it because it's in service to the students and to help them learn.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Robin, for sharing the wonderful work that Minerva is doing. And does anyone here know any college-going high schoolers? Yeah? Anyone know? Anybody have a cousin, younger brother? Make sure they apply to Minerva. Yeah? Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Well,
Thank
thank you so much.
Thanks.